They crossed the ultimate line. Not his pride, or even his name. They touched his dog. Like John Wick, you know how this ends. See this pathetic bullied loser of a student? This weak shell they are mocking? That is nothing but a temporary vessel. Inside dwells the soul of the continent's strongest man. A living legend, untouchable and feared, until his own allies chose betrayal and left him to rot. Reborn into his clan's weakest failure, he faces mockery from peers and abandonment by kin. But his memories, instincts and pride remain absolute. When these fools hurt the one thing he swore to protect, the former sovereign finally stops holding back his true power. Today's story is the clan's failure is the former strongest in the continent. Hooked yet? Like, subscribe, and let us dive into the chaos. Enjoy. Makoto Yayamore was the Lua continent's unrivaled cultivator. He crushed the Demon King's legions during the Dark Ages, single-handedly saving the entire world. Victory was within his grasp. But as the next phase began, the air was stained with the sudden scent of fresh blood. Trusted allies drove blades into his back. His reward for saving humanity? Pure betrayal. Consumed by agony and rage, he demanded the reason why. As darkness closed in, he made a final vow, to drag every single traitor down to hell with him. Then, total silence. Waking up, he found not hell, but a classroom. Students hovered over him, calling out to a teacher that he was finally awake. An instructor asked if he was alright, but Makoto was lost. Death was supposed to be his final destination. These faces and this place were entirely alien. Was this some strange afterlife? Then, mocking voices shattered his train of thought. A student sneered, mocking the Yayamore young master for fainting during a simple test. Proof, they said, of his pathetic weakness. Others laughed, noting he was already exiled from the clan. A girl clung to a boy named Kitama, completely ignoring Makoto's existence. She urged Kitama to break another record. With a cocky smirk, he promised he would. The teacher then ordered the examination to continue. Suddenly, a tidal wave of foreign memories surged. The truth hit him. Reincarnation. This was no longer his home on the Lua continent. A new world. A new identity. Born to a noble family, this version of Makoto suffered from completely blocked meridians. Frail and orphaned, he was cast out by his own kin. Unlike his previous world, these people had zero knowledge of true cultivation. Chai existed here, yet people only lived beside it. They were blind to its potential, unable to absorb or even harness its power. But Makoto knew. Sensing the faint, familiar energy, he instinctively began to circulate the chi through his stagnant veins. Instantly, his blocked meridians shattered. His frame grew, his foundation solidified. He had officially reclaimed the first stage of cultivation. His path was set, regain his peak, return home, and slaughter the traitors. But first, he needed to navigate this new life. Though only at stage 1, he used the physical test to gauge his new limits. A classmate approached, checking if he was truly stable. Makoto calmly stepped up for the 100-meter dash. Laughter erupted. They reminded him he was up against Kitama, the school's reigning champion. A prodigy already destined for a top-tier sports university. A literal god compared to him. Kitama sneered, calling him trash and mocking his lack of pride. Makoto simply remained silent. He was only at stage 1, but that was plenty. A cultivator's basic physiology is leagues above any ordinary human's peak performance. The duel was set. Makoto versus Kitama. As the cowards retreated, Makoto took his mark. The instructor's hand went up. Get ready. Kitama focused on the win. At the signal, he bolted like a bullet. Makoto stayed still. He counted. 1. The crowd roared with laughter. 2. The mocking intensified. 3. Enough time. He vanished. On Lua, cultivators were known for shattering every law of common sense. Speed and strength beyond human comprehension. In a blink, Makoto closed the gap. Panic, Kitama pushed his muscles to their absolute breaking point. It was futile. Makoto counted to 3 and blurred past the line. Silence fell. The stopwatch read 9.88 seconds, a record. Kitama fell to his knees in disbelief. Makoto merely checked his vitals. This was a fraction of his peak, yet the potential was perfect. This was merely the start. Makoto Yayamore set his gaze on the summit. Once, he was the undisputed king of the Lua continent. In 50 years, he surpassed every master. By 65, he achieved stage 11, standing alone at the absolute pinnacle of worldly power. Yet after crushing the Demon King's forces, he was rewarded only with the coldest of betrayals. Staring at his reflection in the school restroom, he saw only weakness. To accelerate his cultivation journey, he required potent medicinal herbs. However, a massive hurdle remained. These medicines were expensive. Ridiculously, impossibly expensive. The original owner's bank account was pathetically empty. Crafting talismans was his next play, but reality was a harsh teacher once more. He could not even afford raw materials. Regardless, for revenge, he needed wealth. Right then, Kitama strolled into the restroom with a smug look. He was not alone. Accompanying the track star was Haru Osaki, the heavy-hitting captain of the boxing club. They mocked his earlier performance. But their true purpose was sinister. Collecting this month's mandatory protection fee. Memories flooded back. This body was a victim of years of extortion. They had already bled him dry just last week. Kitama sensed the change in the air. He signaled Haru to handle it. 1 hit for this trash, he sneered. Haru swung. The old Makoto would have endured this in silence. Not today. He evaded with effortless grace. That punch felt like it was moving in slow motion. His counterstrike exploded against Haru's jaw. To a true cultivator, even a boxing captain was nothing more than a pathetic mortal. Before they could blink, a spinning kick sent the lackey Akira flying. His skull cracked against the stone wall before he collapsed instantly. Hota and Katama stood paralyzed, eyes wide with disbelief. Makoto's gaze remained chillingly calm as he asked if they were finally terrified. Katama roared in denial as they both charged blindly. Makoto intercepted their strikes with ease. Then, he slowly tightened his lethal grip. Agony filled the air. Makoto's lips curled into a cold smirk as he told them to savor the pain. Desperate, Katama begged for mercy. He cast them aside like trash. As they trembled, Haru struggled to his feet. Blood masked his face, but his eyes burned with fury. He lunged once more. But Makoto didn't flinch. A single devastating blow sent Haru crashing through the restroom stalls, shattering everything in sight. Looking at their broken forms, Makoto issued a final warning. Next time, you won't be so lucky. Katama shrieked while Hota pleaded for forgiveness. Katama recoiled as Makoto stepped forward with a chilling demand. Give back what belongs to me. They froze, completely confused by his words. Everything you stole from me. Katama paled, frantically promising to return every single cent. With the cash finally in hand, Makoto vanished. They rushed Haru to the clinic in a frantic mess. Makoto knew he'd been brutal, but he also knew they were too terrified to snitch. School was a nuisance with too many prying eyes. He'd leave eventually, but for now, he finally possessed the one thing he needed. Capital. Funds for low-grade materials. Enough to forge basic talismans. Finally, the first true step toward his grand revenge had officially begun. Talismans were essential tools for novice cultivators. By infusing spiritual essence into rare mediums, one could manifest miracles within mundane objects. Even a first-stage chi refiner could craft these with focus. Makoto began his work. The outcome was nothing short of absolute perfection. A fresh batch of talismans sat before him, shimmering with mystical light. Selling these would provide the fortune his path desperately required. Enough for rare herbs and a secluded sanctuary. Yet reality was harsh. He remained tethered to the lowest level of chi refining. 3 weeks drifted by without a single sale. Passers-by looked on with skepticism, scoffing at his strange wares before walking away in silence. During a morning run, a sickening thud broke the silence. A dog lay broken on the pavement, its small body battered and torn. Crimson stained its fur as it collapsed at his feet. A hit-and-run victim. Makoto paused, his mind calculating the worth of the situation. He drew a talisman, fueled by both pity and curiosity. This specific seal was designed to mend shattered bone and ruptured internal organs. Spiritual energy flooded the dying beast. Its gasping breath steadied, wounds knit together, and fractured limbs snapped back into place. It stood, reborn. It nuzzled him with joy. Suddenly, voices cut through the air. The dog let out a low growl as two figures stepped into view. Sho Wada, the arrogant heir of the Wada clan, stood beside Shizuru Saga, the esteemed daughter of the powerful Saga family. Sho chuckled dismissively, calling it just a stray. Shizuru bristled, her eyes flashing with sudden anger at his heartless and callous words. She demanded he help. But then she froze. The dog wasn't dying anymore. It sat perfectly fine in this mysterious stranger's arms. Confusion washed over her. She'd seen the blood and the broken body. She turned to Makoto, demanding to know how he saved it. Sho glared, demanding to know his identity. But Makoto's focus was on the hospital bag Shizuru held. A golden opportunity had finally arrived. Sensing an opening, he revealed his talisman. Shizuru gasped in awe, but Sho instinctively shielded her, his suspicion flaring into open hostility. He spat accusations of fraud, warning her not to listen. He even tried to pin the cruel accident on Makoto himself. Shizuru ignored the noise, her voice trembling. Can this heal a human? Can it save someone trapped in a deep vegetative state? Makoto detailed its power. Sho laughed mockingly, claiming a scrap of paper couldn't perform miracles. He told her to be sensible. Ignoring the fool, Makoto spoke to her directly. Just place it near the patient. Large seals are 400,000 yen each. Smaller ones, 200,000. Without blinking, Shizuru agreed to take them all. 1 million yen. Sho stood there, completely dumbfounded. Enraged, Sho lunged to drive him away. But Makoto caught his wrist like a steel vice. Sho's face drained of color. He couldn't move. Makoto's aura turned lethal. Stop interfering. He tossed the air aside like a rag doll, then exchanged the seals for her generous check. Yellow for protection. Red for offense. Pray you never need the latter. She bowed with profound gratitude, hope finally shining in her eyes. As he departed, she called out for his name. Without breaking stride, he answered. Makoto Yamori. Behind him, Sho's bitter cries of fraud faded. Shizuru knew how insane this seemed. But if there was even a shred of hope for her mother, she would take that chance. With his new canine companion in tow, Makoto calculated his next move. This money would secure a base and the rare herbs he required. The dog barked sharply, alerting him to a nearby estate. Makoto's brow furrowed. He could sense pure spiritual energy leaking into the atmosphere. There, in the garden, grew the legendary silver heart grass. Meanwhile, Sho lay in a hospital bed, nursing his wounded pride and arm. He vowed vengeance on the man who shamed him. Outside, a shadow loomed. Kenji Suga, the formidable councilman, watched with a grim expression. Shizuru's father berated her for the public disgrace. In the shadows of the hallway, the hospital staff whispered about the brewing storm. Mocking whispers filled the room, ridiculing the councilman's daughter for her supposed stupidity. Shizuru's knuckles turned white with fury. She begged for one final chance to make things right. This was her last stand, and she refused to surrender now. Kenji's temper erupted. He roared at her to quit this madness, mocking her desperate prayers. How could his daughter be this naive? That was when Shizuru finally snapped. She turned the tables, demanding what he'd actually contributed while ignoring her mother's suffering. He was nowhere to be found during those dark months. Guilt gnawed at her for not seeking medical help much sooner. She spat at his hollow excuses of doing his best. If her mother perished, she knew he would simply move on unaffected. He would return to his selfish life without a second thought. Kenji's hand flew up in rage, poised to strike, but he froze. Shock rippled through him at his own impulse. Slowly, he lowered his hand, his face hardening. This girl was now a total stranger. To him, she was merely a stubborn brat. Turning his back, he ordered the life support removed. Stop right there. Shizuru lunged toward her mother's bedside. Gripping that icy hand, she revealed the mysterious talisman. I refuse to let this be the end. Suddenly, the talisman ignited with radiance. A gentle light flooded the ward. Then, a faint voice whispered her name as a hand stirred. Kenji spun around, his face pale as a ghost. He stumbled forward in disbelief as Yokosuga's eyes finally fluttered open to the world. A frail smile appeared on her lips. You look so thin, she whispered. Kenji bolted for a doctor, while Shizuru's tears finally broke. These were tears of pure joy. Kenji returned in a frenzy, announcing the miracle. A wave of medical staff instantly swarmed the bedside. Disbelief filled the room. After a swift checkup, the verdict came. With dedicated rehab, Yoko could reclaim her normal life within 18 months. Shizuru didn't blink. It was the talisman's power, she declared. Silence fell like a heavy shroud until Kenji hurriedly claimed it was divine. Sho was paralyzed by the sight. This was impossible. The lead doctor immediately summoned Professor Suzuki, the nation's premier medical authority, for answers. Sho's blood ran cold. A chilling realization struck him. Was that supposed scammer actually the real deal? Shizuru pulled her mother into a tight embrace. Yoko whispered an apology for the suffering. Shizuru beamed through her weeping. Your return is enough. Deep down, a sacred vow was born. She would repay that mysterious man tenfold if they met again. Meanwhile, Makoto settled into his new sanctuary, ready for the next phase. The path back to the Luya continent began now. The scars of betrayal burned deep. He would never forget the faces of his enemies. First, reaching key refining stage 11 was paramount. To achieve such heights, he required rare spirit springs and divine cultivation materials. Vengeance was finally within reach. Makoto sensed it in his soul. Yet, the spiritual essence of this mortal realm was rapidly draining away. At this rate, the path to immortality would be sealed forever. If the energy vanished, he'd be imprisoned in this weak mortal shell. Breaking these shackles required a source of pure spiritual power. Only hidden spirit springs or legendary artifacts could grant him the breakthrough he needed. Finding silver heartgrass in a common garden was a shock. This wasn't some mere weed, it was a treasure of the spiritual world. This herb was the key to refining realm-shattering elixirs. With a dew pill, he could finally ascend to the elusive second stage of power. Haste would only invite disaster. One wrong move could shatter his cultivation foundation. Facing an unknown future, Makoto opted for calculated patience. He immersed himself in steady training. Later, at the bustling market, Makoto sat at his stall, mentally tallying his meager resources. The price of alchemy was staggering. Even liquidating his entire life's work wouldn't cover the cost of those rare dewy pill ingredients. He tried to stay under the radar, but trouble always followed. The shadows were moving again. Thugs loomed nearby, watching his every move. They'd been stalking him for 3 days, and their numbers were swelling. This wasn't just some petty annoyance, it was a targeted strike. It was a coordinated ambush. Knowing they were ready to pounce, Makoto calmly dismantled his stall and vanished into the streets. Before he could slip away, a familiar voice called out. A girl stood there, noting his recent absence from the school halls. She questioned his presence here. She knew of his exile from the Yayamore family and the rumors of his fragile, failing health. Seeing him drop out entirely was a shock. Makoto recalled her face. She was the only classmate who'd ever stood up for him. She even offered financial help to get him back to class. Makoto gave a polite refusal, citing urgent business before walking away. That look in his eyes chilled her to the bone. Rounding a corner, Makoto halted. 7 on the left, 3 right. 10 targets total. With a steady breath, he moved. As he broke into a sprint, the startled thugs gave chase, straight into a pre-planned dead end. They closed the circle, blades gleaming. Makoto turned with terrifying calm. All together now. The leader's wicked laughter echoed as Makoto demanded names. Why the constant surveillance? The leader sneered, mocking his arrogance. Offending a powerful conglomerate and still trying to do business was pure suicide. They mocked how the young miss of the Amatani family could ever care for trash like him. Makoto's gaze sharpened. Amatani Setsu. Memories surged. The original Makoto was once her fiancé. But that bond was severed the moment he was labeled a talentless weakling. Death for a broken engagement? It didn't add up, but he'd squeeze out the truth. Suddenly, he noticed his classmate had followed him. Seeing the weapons and bloodlust, she panicked and reached for her phone. A thug's hand clamped onto her. She screamed as she was dragged forward. Mochiyama. The boss chuckled, mocking Makoto's charm even while Setsu watched. Mochiyama shrieked, pleading for him to save himself and run. Thugs brandished cold steel. Mochiyama stood firm, declaring her noble lineage. They only erupted in mocking laughter. The leader sneered. No one finds a corpse here, he hissed. A blade gleamed. Blame your own stupidity. Suddenly, Makoto blurred. He materialized instantly, shattering the boss's wrist with a strike. The knife fell, ringing against stone. He seized the leader, crashing his skull against the brick. Mochiyama watched, paralyzed. Could this monster truly be Makoto? The thugs froze as terror took root. Makoto's voice remained chillingly calm. One question. Who sent you to die? Across the city, Kaya's radio crackled. The scars were mobilized. The officer gripped the wheel as the report flooded in. 30 hostiles were swarming East Street's shadows. A female student was being held. Every second lost meant more blood. Kaya floored it, siren screaming. Call for backup, he barked, but keep Chief Unaga in the dark. These weren't street punks, but killers soaked in blood. When silence met his command, Kaya's roar echoed through the car. Then the unthinkable response. No backup needed. Kaya's heart stopped. That lone boy had already decimated the entire gang. In the alley, Makoto's grip tightened like a vice. The gasping boss couldn't believe it. Was this really the Yamore failure? Makoto's eyes were voids of ice. Who sold the secret, Yamatani or Yamore? He whispered. Answer in 3 seconds. Fingers crushed bone. 3, 2. Suddenly, sirens wailed. Police swarmed the scene as Kaya stepped into the light. Stop, Makoto, Kaya shouted. Cross this line and you're just another monster. Makoto turned, his gaze unreadable and haunting. Slaughter would be easy, but the time wasn't right. His true power remained hidden. Makoto let go. The boss crumpled. Kaya exhaled, his mind reeling. He had arrived, but the sight was impossible. One boy had crushed an army alone. The officer approached. Kaya Haruoi. Naomi PD. Makoto remained a statue of silence while Mochiyama tearfully took the lead. The city's watchful eyes had seen enough. Officer Fumiya would handle the rest. Makoto knew the game statements were mere formalities. Then, a frost-chilled voice cut through. A man emerged from the dark, his presence radiating a cold, rigid authority. The police are too soft. He sneered, eyeing Makoto. You're under arrest for battery. This was Grade 2 Commissioner Unaga Risu. He thrust the warrant forward. Mochiyama screamed in outrage. We're the victims. But Unaga's gaze never even flickered. To him, Makoto was the true predator. Kaya's temper snapped, seizing the official by his pristine collar. Stop this lie. Unaga's eyes burned with malice. Careful, Kaya, defy me, and your career ends with a single word. The threat hung heavy. Kaya spat in disgust as Fumiya pulled him back. Amidst the chaos, Makoto's voice cut through. Fine, take me in. Kaya stared, bewildered. But Makoto understood the play. This frame job was deep, and the shadows were finally showing themselves. If he didn't sever these roots now, his cultivation would be hindered. Unaga smirked at the boy's surprising submission. Makoto tilted his head. How did you know I was a student? Unaga flinched. That hesitation revealed everything. A mere pawn. Makoto leaned in, whispering about the hand pulling the strings. Unaga laughed it off, but as Makoto walked past, he stopped. He held up a silver button. Unaga's heart skipped. When was it taken? Next time, Makoto warned. It won't be cloth. While Unaga fumed, a dark cell awaited. Deep inside the detention center, a shadowy figure sat facing the stone wall. A guard struck the bars. You have a guest, Makoto Yamure. The order followed in a whisper. Kill him. Makoto stepped into the pit. The heavy door slammed, and the air instantly thickened with pure, unadulterated killing intent. This wasn't a cell, it was a slaughterhouse. Yet, in the corner sat a man who radiated a terrifying, silent composure. Makoto locked eyes with him. The giant spoke, his voice a low rumble. I have one rule, I don't break insects. To me, you're all glass, he said, rising like a mountain. I'm here to end you. My name is Faki Zenji. Don't resist, he advised. It only makes the agony last longer. Makoto just tilted his head, unimpressed by the threat. Pressure flooded the room. Even weakened, Makoto recognized that sting. Spiritual pressure. Zenji's grin was predatory and dark. The giant lunged to end it, but Makoto vanished. Zenji's eyes bulged as a hand suddenly slammed into his jaw. You're mistaken, Makoto whispered. The weak one here is you. He drove the giant into the concrete with force. Makoto was thrown, but he flipped, landing with feline grace. Zenji spat blood, his eyes narrowing. Fine, no more games. As Zenji charged, Makoto flickered out of existence. In a heartbeat, his fist was buried deep in the giant's gut. The air left Zenji's lungs in a crimson mist. He folded like paper, crashing into the wall with bone-shattering impact. Makoto was already looming above. A devastating kick sent the giant soaring, leaving the cell walls webbed with deep cracks. Zenji clawed his way up, battered and bloody. He roared in fury, but Makoto sidestepped him like a ghost, countering instantly. One final strike pulverized his defenses. Zenji slumped, his consciousness fading as he wondered how a boy became a god. Reality shattered. Makoto appeared instantly, a silent predator before his prey. He slammed his fist down with godlike force. Boom. The earth splintered like glass. Fissures webbed the floor. Zenji hacked up crimson, his body trembling violently. Hot tears blurred his vision as despair finally took hold of his soul. Makoto seized his collar, his eyes devoid of mercy. Who is pulling your strings? He demanded icily. Then, a chilling pause. One more thing. Where did you find this spiritual pressure? Elsewhere, Unaga's desk groaned under his trembling fist. His face paled, contorted by a terror he could no longer hide. What kind of monster is he? Unaga hissed. The reply was dangerously calm. A mere failure of the Yamore bloodline. A nobody you should have buried easily. Unaga ground his teeth. He was reminded that victory was still certain. The Reapers had been deployed deadly assassins born from the shadows of Ryuda. Success meant a direct audience with Lord Ama. Only then could he claim the rank of third-grade chief. Greed wrestled with fear as Unaga swallowed hard. He barked a final warning to Hashimoto, keep your promise. Back in the cold silence of the cell, Makoto stared down the broken and defeated Zenji. Still silent? That takes guts, Makoto noted. Zenji offered a ragged, hollow laugh. I played a game against the god, he whispered, admitting his fatal mistake. You are beyond anything a mortal can handle. Those words sparked a flame in Makoto's eyes. Ordinary people? The young master repeated, seeking the truth. Years ago in Ryuda, Zenji met an ancient hermit. With one hand, he manipulated chi to split a massive tree. He bestowed a bottle of divine water. Zenji consumed the essence slowly over years. Gradually, his very cells evolved, transforming his body into something far beyond human limits. Makoto's mind raced. Divine water? No, it was spirit liquid. If a sacred spring existed in Ryuda, he would claim that power for himself. Such springs only manifest where spiritual aura reaches its peak, condensing over eons into the purest liquid of the heavens and the earth. On the Lua continent, a single drop was worth a kingdom. With such power, why would you ever kneel before mere mortals? Makoto questioned. Zenji's face fell into shadow. His child was dying of ALS. The medical debts were a mountain, and the water was a stay of execution, not a cure. He traded his soul for time and gold. Makoto watched him, then spoke softly. ALS is no death sentence for me. I can save your child. Zenji's world stopped. He thought he was dreaming. The elixir is a poison to the weak, Makoto explained, unless refined by a true master. One wrong drop burns the soul. But I hold the key to true restoration. Makoto drew a shimmering talisman, its energy thrumming with life. The paper blazed with light. Zenji's agony dissolved as his flesh knit back together. He gasped, his eyes wide with absolute religious awe. Choose, Makoto commanded. Betray your master and your child lives, or perish in this hole. Zenji smiled. The monster was actually his only savior. He whispered the name Hashimoto Kos. Most knew him only as Kos. Miles away, a golden-haired man hung up the phone with a derisive sneer. Unaga is trembling over a common Yamore stray. The master of the Kosen Club turned to his guest with a dark, predatory grin. The girl lay bound and broken, salt-streaked tears masking her terror. Naughty child, Kos sighed. Have you forgotten your manners already? He ripped the tape away, gripping her chin with sadistic delight. So, which tooth are we going to start with today? He turned away, suddenly bored. A butler arrived with news Lord Ama was asking about the Yamore boy. Kos dismissed it with a lazy wave. The reapers are already hunting. To me, Makoto Yamore is nothing more than a fresh corpse waiting to be buried. Zenji produced a cross-shaped pendant. Within it lay pure spirit liquid, the catalyst needed to make the silver heartgrass bloom and bear fruit instantly. With those seeds, his path to the second stage of chi refining was clear. Makoto grasped the prize. It was exactly what he needed. Kos is coming for you, Zenji warned. Nobody survives his shadow. Makoto's expression remained as unshakable as a mountain. He was not concerned. Keep our secret, and you will live. As for Kos, I will greet him personally at Nihi University. A yellow sports car roared to a halt. Shizuru emerged from the car, sunglasses sliding down. If she hadn't seen the evidence with her own eyes, she never would have believed it. The street-side talisman boy was the exiled Yamori heir? And he was a junior at her own school? She shook her head at the coincidence. Fate is a strange mistress. She headed for Uncle Jin's office to find Makoto's class. But inside, a heated storm was already brewing. Saki slammed her palms down, her voice echoing with righteous rage. He is in bed with the Yakuza, she screamed at President Mokiyama Jin. Jin sighed, the weight of the university on his shoulders. I cannot drag this institution into the abyss, he whispered. Saki's fury boiled over. You would let corrupt officers take him? She spat. She refused to be a mere spectator while they destroyed an innocent student's life. Instructor Hina placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. He won't be gone for long, she promised. Suddenly, the office door creaked open. Signor. Shizuru stepped in, her presence commanding. Are we discussing Makoto Yamore? Meanwhile, at the station, Detective Kai finally reached his breaking point. He pointed a finger at Unaga's chest. We hunted Scar for years, and now you are just going to open the cage? This is a disgusting abuse of power, Kai hissed. Unaga smirked. Where is your proof? Accusing a superior is a crime that carries a heavy price. I know you are plotting something dirty. Kai roared. Unaga's face turned a violent red. Say it again. He challenged just as the doors flew open. Saki and Shizuru marched in like goddesses of justice. Release him now, Saki commanded. Unaga's eyes bulged at the sight of the intruders. He sized Shizuru up with a sneer. That Yamure rat has no allies left. Your little performance changes nothing here. He stated flatly that Makoto was a violent criminal. No one is walking out of my cell today. Kaya's voice lashed out, demanding proof of Makoto's supposed crimes. Unaga scoffed, declaring internal matters far above a mere subordinate's pay grade. Saki exposed the blatant truth. Why release violent thugs while detaining an innocent student? This wasn't justice, it was pure, stinking corruption. Unaga's gaze turned cold and lethal. He owed her no explanations. Leave now, or be arrested for obstructing the law. Shizuru placed her phone down with chilling calm, a faint, mocking smile dancing on her lips. Go ahead, she challenged. Try it. Pushed to the edge, Unaga snapped. He ordered his men to seize everyone, branding them all accomplices to Makoto Yamore. Kaya was suspended on the spot for harboring criminals. Pure abuse of power, she hissed. Yet Shizuru remained unfazed, posing one final question. Can you truly silence the truth with these fake charges? Shizuru asked. Unaga laughed. Insulting an official would only rot them in prison. Shizuru noted that certain favors were clearly at play. If gold could buy silence, then surely Makuto's freedom had a price too. Onaga's smirk was ice. Power has its privileges, he claimed, and this was simply Makuto's cruel fate. A convenient report would fix everything. He'd claim Kaya resisted arrest and everyone died in the carnage. Silence gripped the room until Shizuru spoke. Director Oji. Did you catch that? A heavy authoritative voice echoed through the phone. Every word, young lady. The room froze. Director Oji had been listening the entire time. The blood drained from Unaga's face. Director Oji's voice was like a gavel, citing involvement with antisocial forces and severe corruption. For threatening a council member's family, Unaga Risu was suspended and ordered into immediate interrogation. His legs buckled as his world shattered. Who? Who are you? He stammered. Chizuru's answer was a death knell. I am of the Suga family. Total despair swallowed Unaga whole. So that boy had ties to the legendary Suga clan. Meanwhile, in his cell, Makuto examined the spirit liquid. Small, but potent enough. He sensed the presence. The rhythmic click of high heels echoed down the hall. The heavy door creaked open, and Makuto looked up. Shizuru stood there with a playful smile. Sorry we kept you waiting, she chirped. Elsewhere, a certain blonde lowlife, Kos, was absolutely livid. He shattered a glass in a fit of rage, screaming at his incompetent pawns. One was half dead, the other bound for a cage. To him they were nothing but broken tools. If the IMA family's mission failed, Kos knew his own head would be next. His guard trembled, asking for the next move. Kos's eyes flared with a murderous light. He would handle this trash personally this time. Death was too easy. He needed to show the IMA family true results. Meanwhile, back at home, Makuto prepared for his next breakthrough. The television hummed as Makuto surveyed his spoils. Every ingredient for his ascension lay before him, bought with his last remaining coin. His wallet was empty once again, but the price was worth the power. He began refining the legendary gathering chi pill immediately. He compressed the dense spiritual energy, stabilizing the core. It was crude by his standards, yet far beyond this world. He swallowed it whole. A violent surge of power flooded his meridians, expanding his very soul. Chi refining stage 2. In a flash, he vanished into thin air. A faint smile touched his lips. He hadn't felt this light in ages. Activating cloud steps, he became a blur faster than any bullet. But the spirit liquid was spent. To climb higher, he needed more. More treasures or essence, or his progress would surely grind to a halt. Faki mentioned a spirit spring in Ryuda. But the path was fraught with danger. Makuto decided to leverage a local contact to slip inside. The entry fee was a staggering 2 million yen, money he didn't have. Suddenly, a flashy television commercial caught his calculating eye. A miracle beauty injection was taking the world by storm. Restore your youth, it promised. In this world, vanity was the ultimate currency. Makuto realized that people would pay anything to stay young. An idea formed. 5 hours earlier, he was dining with the mysterious Shizuru. It was hard to process. She was the daughter of Councilman Suga himself. No wonder she could command the police chief like a servant. She had a favor to ask. Makuto listened as she mentioned the Sugo building, home to the city's largest and most prestigious cosmetics empire. Then came the bombshell. She owned the entire company. She invited him to a grand gala to celebrate her mother's miraculous recovery. The night of the gala arrived. High above the city, the elite mingled. Makuto watched them all, his mind churning with a new plan. True spirit pills were out of reach, but a Juan pill? That was child's play. On his world, it was the secret of every beauty. Here, just a few of these pills could net him millions. The golden opportunity he needed was finally standing right in front of him. Time to strike. Shizuru's aunt and uncle approached, their tongues laced with venom. A woman in her 30s, they sneered, was practically ancient. They pressured her toward marriage, mocking her by comparing her to Masami, a woman they viewed as a pathetic, unmarried failure. Shiro barked that Masami was paying for her youth with a useless existence. Masami only lowered her head, absorbing the cruel insults in silence. Yoko snapped, reminding them that Masami had raised them all. Shiro merely waved it off, claiming his cruelty was actually for her own benefit. He insisted Shizuru accept the marriage proposal now that Yoko had awakened. Suddenly, Yoko began to cough violently, and Shizuru rushed to her side. Shiro compared unmarried women to defective merchandise, pushing a match with the U family. Masami finally tried to speak up for herself. Shiro scoffed, declaring that no cream could ever restore lost youth. But then, a calm, piercing voice shattered the tension. I can. Silence fell as Makuto stepped into the light. There's a limit to such insolence, he declared. Shizuru introduced the man who saved her mother. Makuto offered a polite bow, claiming no thanks were needed. Shiro sneered, dismissing the miracle as a scam while crediting modern science over suspicious charms. Makuto's gaze remained calm. Allow me to introduce myself, he said. I am a researcher of time and a business partner to President Suga. Shizuru stood frozen in shock. Nearby, guests erupted in mocking laughter, jeering that the idea of restoring one's lost youth was a pathetic fantasy. A faint smile played on Makuto's lips. In that case, I have the answer, he murmured, extending a hand to Masami for a live demonstration. As Masami trembled with nerves, Makuto opened a small, ornate box. Inside lay a single pill. This, he announced calmly, is the Zuyan pill. Shiro barked out accusations of fraud, even suggesting the pill was a deadly poison. Masami hesitated, her eyes filled with fear as she stared. Shizuru stepped forward, staking her word on Makuto's honor. Yoko agreed, calling him her savior and declaring her absolute faith in his divine gift. One man scoffed, claiming rejuvenation was impossible. But Makuto leaned in, whispering a temptation into Masami's ear about reclaiming the fire of her youth. Memories of being mocked as a withered hag flashed through her mind. Fueled by a desperate desire for beauty, she finally decided to try it. She swallowed the pill as the crowd watched in horror. Initially, nothing happened, and the guests began to snicker at the apparent pathetic failure. The insults flew, with Shiru looking smug, convinced he had exposed a charlatan. He sneered at Makoto, mocking the low status of a mere researcher. Suddenly, the air shifted as Masami's very essence began to transform. A man thrust a mirror forward, reflecting a miracle occurring before their eyes. Her youthful radiance had returned. The room exploded into chaos as a middle-aged woman rushed forward, desperate to buy a pill for herself. 400,000 yen per pill, Makoto stated coolly, noting he only had 10. Instantly, a frantic bidding war erupted among the elite guests. Shiru's face twisted in bitterness. He was displeased to see the attribution rights for themselves. Ino warned of impending bankruptcy, but Shiru silenced her with a snarl. Rights, he barked. Another voice cut through the air, offering 20 million. Shiru intervened, claiming it was improper to discuss business with Shizuru's esteemed personal guest. Leading Makoto aside, Shiru offered 30 million yen. He proposed a 30-70 profit split, his eyes gleaming with a hidden, predatory intent. 70% for me? Makoto asked. Shiro laughed, clarifying that the lion's share belonged to his company, leaving Makoto with the mere scraps. He boasted of the Hoshisu family's grand influence. Shizuru's voice cut through his arrogance, coldly questioning exactly what connections he had. Shizuru reminded him how he gambled away millions, using her grandmother's legacy as collateral while ignoring the bonds of family. Panic surged through Shiru. His composure shattered as he desperately told the guests. Shizuru threatened to expose the O family's withdrawal and bank notices. Yoko's heart sank, horrified that he had betrayed their own mother's legacy. Shiro turned deathly pale, wondering how they knew his secrets. Shizuru realized they were only there to bleed her mother dry once again. They were parasites, planning to ruin her mother just as they did her grandmother. Shizuru vowed that he wouldn't receive a single cent. She exposed his hollow scheme to profit without capital, knowing he lacked even 30 million yen. He was simply trying to swindle Makoto's genius. He stammered a denial, begging Yoko to defend him. But Yoko's eyes were cold, filled with a deep, crushing disappointment in her own brother. She had entrusted him with their mother's company for a fresh start. Shiru whimpered, clinging to the sisterly protection he had always exploited. He played the victim, claiming he was the family's last man. Alone. Shiru collapsed, unable to believe his family had finally abandoned him. Shizuru gave him a brutal choice. Face court ordered enforcement and lifelong debt. Or sell his failing company to her for exactly 1 yen. Or, she added coldly, if any other fool wanted that rotting carcass of a company, they were more than welcome to take it instead. Shiru sat in stunned silence as the room turned against him. Shizuru then turned to Makoto, noting the many businessmen waiting in the wings. She advised that 40 million yen was the true fair price, ensuring Makoto would retain 80% of the profits for his miracle. Beware of the sharks here, she warned. But she smiled, admitting she felt a strange sense of peace when leaving business in his hands. After the glitzy party, they drove back to Makoto's place. Shizuru admired the home, though he sheepishly admitted it was only a simple rental. He thanked her for the ride, calling it a huge help. She smiled softly, saying they were friends, leaving Makoto completely taken aback. Friends? The word echoed in Makoto's mind as she smiled. For the first time, he felt that his life wasn't so bad after all. He opened his front door, but the warmth vanished instantly. Moonlight revealed his dog lying dead in a pool of blood after being stabbed. A murderous crimson flared in Makoto's eyes as a chilling, terrifying rage consumed his soul. He stood puzzled by the sudden, brutal violence. A hidden spy reported back to the mysterious Kos. Makoto was home, and he suspected the woman with him was his precious girlfriend. Capture her? Kos ordered coldly. They believed that by making him taste despair, Lord Ama's thirst for vengeance would finally be quenched. His eyes widened at his dog's battered body. The cowards had left this cruel gift for him to find. He lunged forward, desperately checking for a pulse. Faint breath remained. A talisman could still save his loyal companion. But above him, a predator clung to the ceiling, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The assassin plummeted, blade aimed for the kill. The cold steel brushed Makoto's shoulder then, like a ghost, he simply vanished into thin air. Instantly, he struck back, his boot shattering the man's jaw while he cradled his dog. From the shadows, the remaining thugs emerged, paralyzed by his godlike speed. Gently setting the dog aside, he ordered it to hide. His previous target lay broken, skull fractured and bleeding. More enemies stepped forward, encircling him. Makoto's gaze burned with malice. Purple aura erupted behind him as he issued a chilling ultimatum. Would they die one by one, or all at once? The mob surged forward, aiming to maim rather than kill. Makoto danced past a lethal blade, his hand glowing as violent purple energy coiled around his fist. With a predatory lunge, he seized an attacker's face and slammed him into the earth. The bone-crushing impact sent the man's weapon flying into the darkness. Fear paralyzed the group as their comrade fell. That was only the first. Another thug roared, charging blindly while screaming at Makoto to watch his arrogance. He slipped under the knife, shattering the man's arm with a brutal twist. As screams filled the room, he crushed the man's throat until his world went black. 2 down. Desperate, the attackers drew firearms, aiming for his legs to cripple him. Muzzle flashes lit the room, yet Makoto moved like a blur, evading every bullet. He advanced, determined to break every bone until they confessed. Elsewhere, the sadistic Kos carefully arranged a terrifying array of torture implements for his next victim. Testing a scalpel's edge, he mocked his captive. He'd dismissed her as a mere brat, never realizing she was the ultimate obsession of every man in Kongai City. The hostage was Shizuru Suga, the high-profile daughter of Councilman Kenji. Chained like an animal to the table, her screams were muffled by thick oppressive tape. A sudden ringtone heard, expecting news of a kill, but the voice on the other end belonged to none other than Makoto. Makoto coldly informed him that his men were permanently silenced. They traded taunts over the surprise before Cost revealed his ultimate trump card, the councilman's daughter. A demonic glint flared in Makoto's eyes. He swore he was coming for him, demanding her release. His voice dropped a final warning against involving the innocent. Cost sneered, dismissing him as a child. He set a 40-minute timer, promising to broadcast Shizuru's brutal end to the entire city once the clock hit 0. The location remained a mystery, a twisted game for Makoto to solve. As the call ended, his grip shattered the phone into pieces before he vanished into the night. The tape from Shizuru's lips, but a thunderous explosion from outside brought his sick games to a halt. Flinging the door open, he demanded answers. His frantic guards reported that the warehouse's fire suppression system had been mysteriously triggered, flooding the area with chaos. Fury boiled over. He'd ordered the alarms disabled to keep the police away. Snarling at his men to watch the girl, he stormed off to investigate the malfunction. Shizuru drifted toward darkness as panic erupted outside. An intruder was loose. Suddenly, a guard's body smashed through the door, splintering the wood into 1,000 pieces. Struggling to focus, she whispered Makoto's name with her last ounce of strength. 1 hour earlier, Zenji was tearing through the night on his motorcycle. He'd traveled miles to deliver a letter of introduction to Ryuda. But despite the urgency of the midnight hour, Makoto was nowhere to be found on his phone. Locating 432 Emi Street, Zenji arrived at the target house. He froze as he overheard a report being sent to Kos. Makoto had finally returned home. Eavesdropping, he heard the chilling promise, an assassin would beat Makoto to death. Worse, they'd already captured a woman and were preparing to transport her to the stronghold. Zenji realized Lord Hashimoto was the alias for the monster who sent those killers. As the kidnappers sped away, he knew Makoto's world was about to ignite. He shadowed the vehicle to secure their coordinates. Arriving at a secluded mansion, he dialed Makoto's number. This time, the call finally connected through the static. Relief washed over him. He quickly reported the kidnapping, explaining that he'd tracked the henchmen directly to a fortified mansion on the outskirts of the city. Makoto cut in, asking if it was 32 Hirami Street. Zenji gaped in shock. Makoto had already convinced an assassin to talk using a cycle of torture and healing. He asked Zenji for backup. While his friend focused on the rescue mission, Makoto intended to personally drag Kos into the deepest pits of hell. Moments later, the warehouse alarm blared. Kos lashed out at his incompetent guards. Terrified that the noise would draw every police siren in the district, he left to investigate, leaving 2 sentries at the door. Alone, the guard sighed, complaining about the brutal difficulty of making a living in the underworld. They grumbled about the no-touch policy regarding the girl. Suddenly, a guard sensed a presence. As Zenji stepped into the light, their faces twisted in pure shock. Zenji whispered for them to embrace the darkness. A single strike sent a guard flying through the door. As he entered, Shizuru desperately gasped for Makoto. Witnessing her state, Zenji noted that Makoto owed him a massive favor. He hoisted her onto his shoulder, moving with urgent speed to escape the facility. The getaway car was parked just beyond the garden. He gambled that the guards distracted by the alarm wouldn't return quickly. They had to vanish before the trap snapped. Suddenly, a bullet tore through Zenji's thigh, dropping him instantly. From the shadows, Kos smirked, admiring his own lethal accuracy after all these years. The guards showered their master with praise. Zenji winced, wondering how they returned so fast. Kos sneered, marveling at the audacity Zenji showed by appearing before him. He offered a cold greeting. Kos grinned, visibly thrilled at the prospect of finally delivering a long-overdue punishment to his former acquaintance. Zenji retorted that victory wasn't assured yet. Meanwhile, outside the mansion, the guards caught a glimpse of a silhouette. They shouted a challenge into the darkness. Makoto emerged silently, a crimson aura boiling around him as suffocating killing intent choked the air. He walked forward until a guard dared to grab his shoulder. The guard demanded an answer. Without a word, Makoto's fist shattered the man's face, sending his broken body spiraling through the air toward the iron gate. The mob drew their weapons in a panic, charging simultaneously. Makoto became a streak of crimson lightning, his energy flashing as he systematically dismantled the horde. One foe was sent soaring as another was hammered into the dirt, the strikes landing with such blinding speed they couldn't even blink. He emerged from the chaos completely unscathed. He coldly announced his arrival to Kos. Meanwhile, deep within the mansion, Zenji lay broken and bleeding, utterly cornered by a sea of enemies. Regret gnawed at him for following Makoto's lead. He felt the sting of shame, failing to protect even one innocent soul. Kos sneered, promising to butcher his corpse once he died. Suddenly, the main entrance erupted in a violent explosion. As the smoke cleared, Makoto appeared in the frame, his body flickering with a menacing purple aura. He declared he was there to drag them to hell. Zenge breathed a sigh of relief, noting his late arrival, flailing its divine power. Kill him, Kos screamed, deafening roar, but our hero vanished into a blur, his eyes burning with an unleashed terrifying aura. Lead meant nothing to a second-stage cultivator who mastered the cloud shadow step. With a bone-shattering kick, he leveled a man. Kos trembled as terror took hold. Makoto tore through the ranks like a storm. Desperate to survive, Kos scrambled toward a hidden back exit, his footsteps heavy with the weight of his fear. This wasn't part of the deal, he cursed. He expected a weakling, yet these elite movements suggested a bloodline from a prestigious high-ranking family of warriors. He reached the security door, screaming for an escape. Panic surged as he fumbled with the passcode, but the red light flashed. It was wrong. He was trapped. His men were tossed aside like ragdolls. Shaking with cowardice, he warned Makoto to back down, claiming the boy couldn't handle the wrath of his powerful backer. He spat out the name. Lord Ima. The shadow orchestrating everything. Makoto think dumb. It was Joe Ima, the elite scion of the legendary Ima clan, who wanted him dead. A political alliance was forming between the Ima and Amaya families. To smooth the path, they needed to erase the pest rumored to have touched the only chance. He boasted about the Ima family's deadly experts and Joe's own monstrous strength. Makoto's eyes narrowed. It seemed he wasn't the only cultivator in this world. Cos tried to negotiate, offering his services in exchange for mercy. Hearing him repeat the offer on the way out, the response was a bone-crushing blow. Makoto's fist hammered down with the weight of a mountain. Slap. The room was a nightmare. Women were chained to the walls, covered in brutal bruisage as Makoto stood in silence. The terrified captives cowered. He told Cos that these victims were the only ones qualified to judge his worth. With a flash of his dagger, the chains shattered. He tossed the blade to the floor, leaving the broken man to the mercy of those he had tortured. Cos begged, offering riches and power. But his victims didn't want gold, they wanted blood. Sending him to the pits of hell was the only payment they required. Moments later, Makoto used the talisman to mend Shizuru's wounds. He urged Zeng to vanish before the authorities. He would only depart once the innocent were safely in the hands of the law. With the intelligence secured, Zeng Ye asked about the next move. Makoto planned to hunt down the Ima family, but he kept his deeper thoughts hidden. Back home, he pushed his body to its limits while his dog slumbered. Cos was dealt with. After closing the door, he called her, questioning the mysterious invitation and the formal suit she had sent him. She smiled through the phone, glad it arrived. She urged him to look closer at the contents of the golden invitation. The Hoshisu family was throwing medicinal pills. They needed to infiltrate the inner circle of the city's pharmaceutical giants. They ruled the medical world of Kongai City. Then, she dropped a bombshell. His former fiancée would also be gracing the event with her presence. The news hit him like a physical blow. Before he could demand the name, she revealed it. The elegant daughter of the Amaya family, Yuki Amaya. At the gala, Shizuru pointed out the titans of industry, like Mr. Pierce of the Ace Group and the influential board chairman, Taro Akai. These were the masters of Kongai City's economy. Makoto wondered if they were all vying for the Hoshisu family's favor. Shizuru sighed, noting that despite his noble birth, he seemed oblivious to the sheer weight of the power surrounding them tonight. A mere connection to the Amaya name was enough to make these wolves desperate. Everyone was waiting for the arrival of the family's crown jewel. As they stood by the entrance, the Hoshisu matriarch arrived with Lady Yuki Amaya. Instantly, Makoto sensed a powerful ripple of spiritual energy from her. Was this the woman his body's previous owner loved? He felt a surge of wariness as he watched her. Nana Hoshisu greeted the room with a smile while Yuki kept her gaze cold. Makoto wondered if she too walked the path of cultivation. He questioned if this world held its own ancient secrets of power. She made no effort to suppress her energy, signaling an immense, terrifying confidence. She surely knew Ima, and he intended to extract the truth. Meanwhile, Shizuru warmly greeted her aunt, Nana, who asked about her mother's recovery. Nana called her mother's awakening a miracle from the heavens. Shizuru thanked her, noting that her mother was slowly reclaiming her strength day by day. She presented the Shu Yan pills, the cutting-edge miracle of their company. Offering them to Nana, she wished for her beauty to remain eternal. Nana's eyes sparkled at the legendary swan pills. Beside her, the man gasped in pure, unadulterated shock. Interest surged through the crowd. These pills commanded a king's ransom, despite never hitting the open market. Yuki's gaze intensified. Nana scrutinized the treasure, declaring it the absolute peak of alchemical perfection. She sensed the master's touch. Having met alchemy's elite, she wondered who forged this without a single seal. Shizuru revealed her mysterious partner. When Makoto introduced himself, Nana and Yuki froze in sheer disbelief. Nana gasped she once held this boy. Now, he stood before her, a master of the divine Shuan pills. She scoffed at the Yaimure's blindness. Yuki countered, claiming such arts were worthless within the walls of nobility. To nobles, raw power was everything. Otherwise, the Amaya family would have crowned him an elder years ago. This confirmed Makoto's dark suspicion the great families had indeed hoarded the secrets of ultimate cultivation. Though pale compared to Lua continent arts, she judged his vast talent meaningless given his low social status. Makoto sank into a deep, silent reflection. An image of his master flickered. Just a hobby, he lied, before a thunderous voice shattered the air, whispered in awe. Desperate to know this newcomer's true identity, the legendary scion of House Eima had arrived. Nana nodded, recognizing the young master from Makoto's heart raced, so this was him. Joe quipped that formal respect would only anger Yuki. His gaze fell upon a beauty. Nana introduced Shizuru of the Suga clan, sparking a flicker of dark amusement. Introducing himself as Joe Aima, he extended a hand. Makoto gripped it, mentioning that Joe Aima was supposed to be a powerful cultivator. He released a subtle aura. Most masters mask their spiritual fluctuations to hide their true, overwhelming strength. Master's meridians. His energy surged, yet he met a void. Shocked, he realized this master possessed no spiritual power at all. Joe snapped his hand back and moved toward Yuki. Makoto frowned. Not a single ripple of energy was felt. He was convinced now this man wasn't a cultivator. He didn't even flinch at the mention of Makoto's name. A feast was served as laughter filled the air. Soon, the butler announced a grand ball in the hall. As the music played, Makoto brooded. If Joe wasn't a master, what kind of elaborate deception was this? Air was shunned. It seemed no man in the room was whispered in confusion, but his comrade silenced him with a look of pure, unbridled terror. Rumors swirled. Those chosen by Joe became hollow shells. eventually failing to recognize their own blood relatives. Every few days, they vanished without a trace. Inside the car, a suffocating tension filled the small space. Suddenly, a sharp slap echoed. Joe was scolded for holding another woman's hand in front of Lady Yuki. A ring flared with eerie light. "I kept you for your utility," a voice hissed. "But failure means death." The guard's features twisted and melted, revealing the terrifying, true face of the real Joe Ama. They trembled just as the rumor said. Only one man emerged. Confusion reigned. Inside, the bound imposter wept in silence, his eyes burning with a lethe swelled. Joe approached Yuki with an apology, but her eyes were fixed elsewhere. He followed her gaze and froze, dancing with a man before the entire world. Who was this stranger? Shizuru's cheeks were flushed with warmth, while Makoto looked completely caught in her spell. The final notes faded as the crowd erupted in applause. She praised his grace, and he offered a smile. She had told him to sell his divine pills to the Hoshisu family. He first had to match the atmosphere. Muscle memory from the Yamori estate finally awakened. The former host's ballroom training was paying off. As a stage 2 cultivator, his equilibrium was flawless. That brush with disaster was closer than it looked. Nana questioned Yuki about Makoto's hidden dancing prowess. Yuki coldly recognized Makoto. He claimed it was their first meeting. Nana pushed, questioning why the mighty Ima family couldn't track a disowned child. He countered that making waves in Kunhai City was forbidden, as it fell under Hoshisu family. She acknowledged his alchemical genius was extraordinary. His potential was too vast to ignore. She desired to bind his future to theirs. This wild variable could not Yuki's presence. He would have erased that trash Makoto and Nana ages ago. Whispers erupted about the man beside Shizuru. Recognizing the Yamore crest, they recalled he was Yuki's discarded fiancé. They mocked his audacity to face Joe. He had almost grasped a prize far beyond his station. The shame would be unbearable. But Makoto was now an exile, stripped of his family name and honor. His only hope was groveling to the Amaya family. They assumed he was merely using Lady Yuki's influence. He was likely scheming to reclaim his noble status. Why else would a commoner dare show? She departed with a heavy heart. Nana sighed. She claimed to see through his schemes and warned him to abandon his wicked ambitions. High society's tangled web was far more treacherous and complex than a commoner like him could ever. She was. Her confusion grew. He pointed out that her leaking spiritual aura was clearly beyond her own control. Her inner energy addition. He warned that her forced cultivation path offered speed at the cost of total physical collapse. Her body was at its breaking point. Yuki stared, wondering how a mere commoner possessed such divine insight. He offered a cure for her plight, noting her skepticism would only hasten her inevitable downfall. Her trust mattered little to him. It was her life on the line, and time was running out. Leaning in, he whispered a deadly proposition. He had a specific gift intended for Joe's hands. Joe's blood boiled as he watched their intimate exchange. Soon, the banquet began to wind down. As Shizuru and Makoto prepared to leave, Nana's voice cut through the air, halting their departure. Intrigued by the Juyan pill, she invited them for a moonlit stroll through the estate gardens. Makoto knew the Hoshisu matriarch hadn't come just for pills. She was hunting for something far deeper. She urged him to drop formalities and call her auntie. He refused, citing his severed family ties. She noted his striking resemblance to Yuki. After the tragedy, Yuki fell under the Amaya family's iron grip. Her uncle, the puppet master, controlled her entire existence, even dictating her future marriage. Fortunately, an elite martial sect recognized her talent, granting her the path to becoming a legendary cultivator. Yet, as a noble, only transcending her mortal limits could break the chains of the Amaya family. Shizuru questioned what transcendence meant. Makoto knew it required the nearly impossible feat of reaching stage 3 cultivation. The gap between stage 2 and stage 3 was a vast chasm like heaven and earth. She had chosen a forbidden shortcut, trading her very lifespan for a momentary surge of power. When Makoto asked why she shared this, Nana confessed that every cure she tried had failed miserably. Just like Shizuru's mother, hope was fading. Yet, Nana was desperate to save the girl. She couldn't forge the Juan pill, but Makoto's alchemical mastery surpassed any master she had ever known. Careless and cold, Joe left his double to handle the mysterious package with strict orders to leave it sealed. Little did he know, he would soon be forced into the fray personally. Joe scoffed at Makoto's supposed progress, seeing only the same pathetic trash he had always despised. With a sinister grin, he marked both Nana and Makoto for death. His ring pulsed with eerie light as the mimicry began, perfectly molding his form into Makoto's likeness. Beside him, the terrified double could only tremble in silence. Move forward. Meanwhile, atop a towering skyscraper, Makoto looked down, knowing their fated reunion was drawing near. Clutched in Makoto's hand, specialized tracking talisman. With a gentle release, the glowing insect spiraled down toward its hidden prey. The talisman finally stopped, pinpointing the target within an Ima family stronghold. Without a second's hesitation, Makoto leaped from the rooftop to begin his assault. Elsewhere, Nana guarded the sacred gilded blossom, a rare plant that bore fruit only once every 3 years alongside the precious water spirit reishi. The harvest was nearly ripe, destined to be her bargaining chip at the Grand Cultivator tournament in 3 months. Suddenly, a chilling presence pierced through the air. She demanded the intruder reveal themselves. A voice emerged from the shadows, mocking the fallen genius of the renowned 100 Herbs sect with venomous praise. Despite her crippled cultivation and grievous wounds, her spiritual senses remained razor-sharp. Stepping into the light, a menacing monk finally revealed his face. Her heart raced as she interrogated the stranger, her mind racing for a way out. She hoped that with only one foe, a desperate escape might still be possible. Suddenly, a second monk blocked her path. The massive priest laughed, reminding her that even a lion exerts its full soul when hunting a mere rabbit. He warned that they would show no mercy, attacking with everything they had. Nana realized with dread that these two were being exceptionally cautious of her. When she demanded to know their goal, the heavy-set monk ordered her to surrender quietly. He warned her against her ground, preparing to show them the true power of her garden. She triggered a hidden bloom, releasing a lethal cloud of poison. While the monks recoiled, Nana stayed safe by biting down on a protective green heartgrass. The overlord flower's scent was potent enough to topple an elephant, a desperate gambit meant to buy her the precious seconds she needed to flee. Facing two masters was a death sentence, so she turned to run. But then, an icy, familiar aura washed over her, freezing the very blood in her veins. Shadow arts snared her movements, confirming her worst fears. The hidden shadow sect had aroused, chillingly confirming her suspicion. They were the butchers who had annihilated her sect. Trembling, she demanded to know his identity, as their grand appearance was far ahead of schedule. She was certain they would remain in the shadows for years to come. But as the man's hood fell, the sight of his face left her utterly paralyzed with shock. For a moment, it looked exactly like the hero himself. But it was merely Joe Ima wearing a flawless disguise. Nearby, the oblivious guards were succumbing to sleep. The shift change had finally arrived. And the weary sentries were already dreaming of food. One suggested a steaming hot pot to end their long night. They joked about what kind of gourmet feast the young master was enjoying inside his locked room. They had no idea the man inside was a total fraud. Using the Spectre Shadow step, Makoto arrived unnoticed at Joe's door. He released the green butterfly, watching intently as it signaled his target's location. The insect flew upward, revealing that Joe wasn't in the room. Inside, the fake was simply slurping ramen and drinking while absorbed in a existence. He snapped his chopsticks, cursing the unfairness of it all. He loathed being a mere shadow, forced to live as a puppet just because of his face. He could still feel the phantom ropes from when he was first captured. He had been warned that his very life he was a ghost, a disposable tool kept alive only by the original's whim. A copy could never surpass the original, a cruel truth etched into his very soul. His only value in this world was playing a part in Joe's twisted game. Ignoring his orders to leave the box alone, the double's curiosity took over. The moment he pried it open, the emerald butterfly surged out into the room. Before he could react, Makoto materialized behind him like a ghost. Terrified, the fake spun around and tumbled to the floor in a pathetic heap. Makoto realized instantly why he felt no spiritual aura from the man. Recognition dawned on the double. This was the youth fell right through the lie, coldly demanding the location of the true master of the house. Meanwhile, a gang of thugs plotted an ambush, confident they could break some college kid with ease. They waited along his usual route, ready to strike. They boasted about the bones they would snap to please their employer. But then, the target appeared. Makoto was walking right into their trap. Spiritual energy. They were more than just objects, they were reservoirs of immense power. Crafting such a tool required a master's soul to be poured into the forge. Only those at the fourth stage of cultivation possessed the control needed to create them. Without that level of mastery, manipulating spiritual energy was impossible. In this mana-starved world, forging such a vessel should have been an unattainable dream. Unless the Ima family sat upon a hidden spirit spring. Once he crushed them, he would need to find the Ryuda spring to ascend his power to the next level. The thugs interrupted his thoughts, surrounding him with cocky grins. They boasted that someone had paid a king's ransom to see him permanently broken. Makoto's eyes turned cold, sending a shiver through the mercenaries. Panicked by his gaze, the boss screamed for him. Yet, in a flash of movement, Makoto sent them all soaring through the air like broken dolls. With brutal efficiency, Makoto crushed the remaining thugs into the dirt. As the boss trembled in terror, Yuki began scouring the area for the truth. Grainy rooftop footage revealed the truth. At 1 a.m., two shadows ambushed Nana in the dark. The video cuts to black kidnapped. Amidst three assailants, one face was caught clearly on camera. It was Makoto from the party. Tracking him was easy with a friend's help. She never imagined he would target her family. A guard blocked her path. She didn't flinch, demanding to see his master immediately. Accusations of kidnapping flew from her lips. Surprisingly, she was ushered into the serene garden. Subordinates worked the land like mere peasants. There sat Makoto, lounging with cold indifference. Ignoring his servant, she called out his name. "Release my aunt this instant," she commanded. "A final chance for peace if she returns now." Makoto looked genuinely baffled by her claims. His gaze sharpened. She screamed at him to stop playing games with her aunt's life. She played the evidence. March 25th. Identity. Was Joe trying to shatter their bond? Yuki's power surged as her patience reached its limit. She threatened the cultivator's wrath. He calmly stood his ground, denying he was even there. Yuki froze, her confidence crumbling into a sea of doubt. The leader showed the chat logs with Joe. Their orders? Impersonate Makoto and cause chaos. The plan was a setup to frame him. But what about that damning security footage? He countered with another video. The imposter confessed his true name, Yasuhiro Yosa. Joe's double used a mystical ring to mirror his face perfectly during the gala. Appearance-altering powers? Makoto was certain a rare spiritual vessel was behind that haste would endanger Nana further. His caution felt like cowardice crossed his lips. Let's help him dig his own grave. That's all today. For weekly updates, visit Manhwa Updater. Stay awesome, and I'll catch you in the next one.